believe that something was there at the beginning of the universe, you know. They compel the energy. You know, we say that spirit is like wind, right? And wind is a form of solar energy, you know?
No.
You don't think so?
Let's bring it back to tactics. Does anybody remember what the taking the roof off tactic is?
Reductio ad absurdum.
Well, you just answered the second question.
Taking it to its logical end.
Do you remember what 3 steps there are for employing that tactic, taking the roof off? How is that done? Because there were three steps.
You have to analyze and clarify the initial proposal, or the initial
Yep, that's the
stance,
first one.
and be first.
What does it say?
Yeah,
Does it
reduce
apply
it
to
to its
itself?
most basic concept. Yep.
And does it apply to itself? And then
Well, that's closer to the suicide tactic. The second step was taking it for a test drive. See if it leads anywhere absurd. Like what consequences result from the view. And then the third step was to invite the person to consider the implications of the view and the truth of that follows from the reduction to its absurdity. Why do you think taking the roof off works so well?
it gets them to think about their statement.
Well, I think that
To the end. No, okay.
we can take a concept and we can put, as he put it, walls around it or a dome over it, and
Or a roof.
say that it works in this particular situation and be content with that without exploring the larger implications of it. And so I think this forces you to look at this in a larger context.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why Francis Schaeffer actually called it taking the roof off, because the roof is, like you said, a form of self-delusion. You have to delude yourself in order to live consistently within this denial. You know, if you deny that God exists, then you have to create this delusion for yourself, the roof, so to speak. And so if you take the roof off, it exposes the vulnerabilities of that self-delusion.
There's a term I heard this last week, and this guy was talking about Mormons, but the term, I forget. What was it? It was like if you have two opposing views in your head. They have a term for that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Cognitive dissonance?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, those people have cognitive dissonance.
Right.
You know, and why that would bother somebody? I think that, because I was just thinking about this. It seems to me like the questions being asked in revert to somebody would be asking them, is this personal to you? If this is impersonal to you, then a lot of what you have to rebut with is going to be information filled, and it's going to have to be good, you know. So a lot of times I think taking the roof off and putting the spotlight back on them and saying, do you really mean this?
Yeah,
They
exactly.
have to ask themselves,
Exactly.
do I really mean it, or do I just have a really strong argument?
Exactly. Have you really thought about it?
So
Precisely.
you really believe that what you believe is really real.
All right, so let's get started with this week's, which is Steamroller.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
First, I'd like to talk about what we covered last session, okay? We learned the basics of a tactic that I call taking the roof off. It's one I got from Francis Schaeffer. He's the one who actually named it. There are 3 steps to this tactic. I role modeled that for you. If you can't stop them, and if you can't shame them, then you leave them. Let them have the last word, then you walk away. That is going to be the best way to deal with that kind of steamroller.
I guess that's the end.
You sure it's not the cable?
Hmm?
It's not the cable today?
No, it's not the cable.
Okay.
Actually, I remember now why it ends so abruptly, because this is the expanded version, and so at this point, I think he talks about how, this was the last session, but they edited that out because next week you'll notice the video looks a little different. I mean, it's the same set and he wears the same clothes, but he looks a little older, and it's noticeably different.
He looks 100 years old.
It reminds me of, we've all heard the Doppler effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of the Doppler effect, where ideas seem a lot smarter if they're coming at you really fast.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, has anybody not encountered a steamroller in conversations? I'm sure that we all have.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying, like, have you never encountered a steamroller, like, ever in your life? Like, this is a new concept.
Yeah, okay.
Surely everybody has, right?
Yeah.
Is anybody besides me a steamroller? Who've been a steamroller?
No, I'm sure I was when I was agnostic. I said, yeah, right, okay, buddy.
I've accidentally been a benevolent steamroller.
A benevolent steamroller. What do you
Yeah.
mean by benevolent?
Like, because I just get really excited about things, and talking with certain people, I can kind of interrupt.
Oh, I see.
Too
Just like
much.
getting carried away.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've definitely done that for sure.
I have been at times. You have ideas and you want to make your points and you're over anxious and you just get carried away and
Yeah, when I was preparing this, I was thinking, like, who are some of the most notorious steamrollers? Not necessarily like in my personal life, but it was just like that I've seen on YouTube or on the radio or whatever. And I think probably the most notorious steamroller I've ever seen would be Lawrence Krauss. Have you ever heard Lawrence Krauss debate? He's an atheist.
Heard that name.
He's a physicist, and he's debated, I think, like 3 or 4 times with William Lane Craig. And in one of them, the moderator actually like puts the beat down on Lawrence. She's like, Lawrence, we're never gonna get anything done if you keep interrupting Bill. Like, that never happens. The moderator in a debate almost never has to play referee. Usually the moderator is more like an MC or a host, just kind of progressing the conversation. But in that one, that's like the only time I've ever seen a moderator actually like, this has got to stop. This is unacceptable.
I don't know if he's a steamroller, but I thought about Russell Brand in my head just now. Because he keeps.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you watch The View and they have a Republican guest,
Mm-hmm.
they steamroll right over them. They'll stop in mid-sentence. As a matter of fact, one time they asked the guest to leave, and Whoopi walked that person off the stage, off camera.
Wow.
That is a steamroller.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I used to listen to conservative radio when I lived in Denver. Has anybody heard Mike Rosen talk?
yeah.
He used to do that all the time, and it would frustrate me to no end. He would do that, and he would do the professor's ploy, where he'd make a claim, and then he'd be like, "All right, now prove me wrong." It's like, and then when you try to prove him wrong, you'd be like, "Well, it's my show." People would call him out on interrupting
And
him.
I can hit Mr. Holt button.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
my
I
show, and I
remember
can hit Mr. Holt button. It's just like,
He
dude.
wasn't listening, so let me tell you what he meant to say.
Yeah. That was so frustrating, but you learn from other people's mistakes, right?
Well, and I think
Sometimes.
Sometimes,
that
yeah.
when quite often that is a technique used when you don't have a good answer.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a defense mechanism. It's what is it? They say if you the facts are on your side. Talking about court, if the facts are on your side, pound the facts. If the facts are not on your side, pound the table.
Yeah. I feel like now that you mention that, I've seen that in conversations that I've had where I feel like the person that I'm talking to is so unconfident about their position that they're just looking for something to challenge so that they can interrupt me, because I'm actually getting somewhere. I'm making valid points, but they don't like that, and so their response is to just interrupt and keep challenging. So I thought what we could do is practice this for a few minutes. This is actually, I would argue, one of the simplest tactics, but probably the most difficult because it's the most emotionally charged. So the last few weeks we've been doing just kind of group discussion, but I wanted to try pairing up with a partner for a few minutes and practicing this. And in doing so, remember, this is just practice. Don't get too serious about it.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So
I've seen a lot of steamrolling in political debates.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to be this question. This is just an example
Oh,
question.
right, yeah, no.
So if you can think of something else, feel free. But
Just recently, there was a deal in Congress, and I didn't see the video, I just heard the transcript, or read the transcript, but they're talking about censorship and stuff, and government censorship, and there was a couple of journalists who released the Twitter files, and the Democrat Congress people were addressing them, and it was a perfect example of steamroller. Not letting them finish, not, just asking something and then immediately just attacking them and moving on to another question.
They've been doing that about the releasing of the video
Yeah.
of January 6th,
Yeah.
where the guy in
Oh,
the
yeah.
horns
Yeah.
was actually being escorted by Capitol Police, and it looked like they were giving him a tour. And now the left is shutting it up right away. And I'm watching that unfold now, and I'm going, when does this?
yeah, when does it end?
When does the veil come off and
Yeah.
people just go,
What's the guy on the Daily Wire that movie, What is a Woman?
Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh, yeah. So I saw him, and he was in some court, and they were asking him questions.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't let him finish.
Yeah.
He would do one response and like, yeah, what about this? And they go, oh, time's up. Next question. And it's like,
How convenient.
Yeah.
like the impeachment hearings? Yeah. No, you can't defend yourself, this is not a court, and let's go on.
well, I love that they asked them the question, and then there's a term for that. It's like, what makes you qualified to do that?
Guilt to authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard this verse the other day, and I'm sure you guys have already heard it. Something that's like Psalm of Psalms or Solomon or something. Solomon says, "Answer a fool not according to his folly, lest thou be like him, like unto him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit."
That's a good verse.
So they both like back to back say kind of contradictory things, but there's wisdom in there, right?
Oh yeah.
Sibling rivalry.
Well, no, I don't think there.
Paraphrase one of the proverbs is better to be silent and thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing like that you guys keep pointing out is like people hate it when you don't answer the questions. They say, "Well, why should we believe you're not racist?" And you go like this, "I don't know. Why should you?"
Answer
And
the
then you're just
question
like-
with the question.
All right, so how do we want to pair up? Do we want to just pair up with the person sitting next to you, or should we try to randomize it?
Well, I don't care.
Doesn't matter. You're the
All right.
leader.
I can pair up with myself and do it. What are you talking about? I said.
All right, so let's spend 5 minutes with Michael and Katie and Scott and Igor. And then Randy and Colin.
You want to be the roller?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
We'll just spend
glad.
5 minutes on this and then we'll come back.
You shall not speak. What are we talking about? The last thing we're talking about.
Oh,
Controversy?
I have the
So which one,
steamroller.
Yes.
Which part you want to
Since you want to give me one of those examples, I can.
I don't know, it's hard to do like on the spot.
Oh, okay.
Especially since I've been trying hard to not be an interrupter.
That's
I know, okay, alright,
Can't think of it.
well, ask the question.
We could do that one.
Which political party do you support?
Or
Okay.
So I'll ask you.
I think you have one, like,
How's this?
If you're going to steamroller, then yeah.
All right.
You'd ask me.
My mother died.
What political party do
She
you
looked like she was perfectly healthy.
The non-voting
Why does
Support
God
party
let
that
that happen?
most aligns with my moral
You
and.
can't just say,
What do you mean by
you gotta
that?
pick one.
I don't know. I guess I'll provide
You
that to
don't, you don't think
Yeah.
that Republicans do?
Well, yeah, it's really confidence.
Well, they.
Well,
Maybe a little slower.
you know,
to
work
get
out,
there.
the line of how we, so
Fuck around, I'll do it.
Well, I can't argue that.
So therefore, you know,
Who's
we
part
all
of that
deserve
support?
to-
Probably
That's a good question.
What?
So,
And
Does it affect you?
I had to pick,
it's
if
not
I had to
like
pick
it's
a
necessarily
worst of two evils, I'd probably pick.
Why is it gotta be the worst of two evils?
Fred.
Well, honestly, if you ask
Very
yourself,
much
people
fed
say,
up with
sure, and I
things
do.
happen.
I'm like the cat in the mouse, I know how to make a
Very
choice.
political person, but
So-
I'm very fed up with
The
it.
reason why,
And he's convinced me, and
Well, I
it's
know
because
that's what the
the
Bible
state
says.
used to be.
Well, no,
They
you
didn't
need
support.
to listen to what the Bible says
And
because
then
God is
generally
the
I am,
creator.
but from what his.
oh no, I wish
Yes,
I had something
God
right.
created Adam and Eve.
Arguments.
That was a long time ago. Things are
It's
different
Well,
really
today.
hard
You should
I
be a
mean,
loving.
He
argue
created
that
it
they
a
are
long time ago.
Yeah, if somebody seriously asked me this
We're
question,
all
what
the
part of
same
your
for
sport
that.
like,
flavor of it.
I'd say,
I was
well,
a loving
I've sported
God
Republicans,
and a loving God.
and if they're like one, I'd say, well,
Well, he
it seems to me like
was,
there's
but
only
he
a
also,
couple contenders to pick from in reality, so I'm only gonna do with those. So with those, I would say
he wants
that
to have us
two of them
come
seem
back
to be
himself, so
outliers
So he loves
outside of
us
what
enough
I would like to see.
bring us
I
back.
appreciate the.
Yeah, we got two non-steamrollers.
You guys are being too polite.
Well, you're descended from,
No, I just felt.
and so if you're descended from him,
I
you're not gonna be
tend
part
to
of
be-
it.
Yeah, I would love to do
Why don't you
it.
just get out there
Yeah,
and.
this is hard.
I know.
One
That was
one thing my wife likes to say,
started
she
right away
says,
with the interruptions, so
Yeah.
that's what I've been waiting.
I
for.
tend
well,
to
if you
be
wanna do something about it, why don't you go out and do
Yeah.
something about
Go
it?
to the
Why don't
Right,
you go out
like,
and
I'm
because
not able
You're just
to-
part of the problem, you're just siding with me.
Yeah.
Why should it go make a difference?
I'm not
And
able
I'm
to
like,
like.
unfortunately, I've been arrested too often.
We can reverse it.
Sure, we could try it.
Okay, go ahead.
Alright,
It seems
so-
like I can.
Yeah, I don't know, let's
Um,
ask you.
What,
I mean, I think we already asked that, but.
Yeah.
do you actually have political
what do
parties?
you think
Time to think about
about,
I lean towards the Republican
Not what
side,
they're saying, just letting them
though, but
talk and talk.
I would, I
What do you
would
think
vote
of
for
state
it on the
For a
list.
second, so I can make the one statement that
They were-
What do you think about it?
and then there.
I think it's not
Okay,
very good.
in reality,
I think you're wrong.
do you think there will
I
ever be
think
a
that
party?
we have
One
been
example
trying
of
to tell the truth,
Republicans that could
and there's
use
too
this
many
talking
like you that try to tell us what we're doing wrong,
it's
and
gonna
it's
have
just
to
not
grow.
right.
I'm religious, but
But yes.
you know, I tell you.
Well, you're just not educated,
I can't
Well,
disagree with you.
because you haven't gone to school yet, you're educated.
It's gonna have to play out in a logical, it's gonna have to get retarded, they're gonna go, oh,
From a
Use
question
different arguments.
duh.
Jesus
I have
wasn't
masters
real.
I've always
Yeah, but I-
questioned what's actually retarded and what's not, because it
Where
seems like what you say.
Where
it's
did you
gonna
get
have
it
to
from?
go along.
Yeah, but that's
But-
not in school, we know that,
Yes.
in the state school.
This is a real
Some
question.
have come back.
What happens when you're given two sentences
Before it gets you real educated.
and you can't see the other option?
Jesus.
The other option is to do nothing,
Oh, of course.
And that's the best place.
which could happen to
You
Nazis.
should know
So,
that, but obviously you're just not understanding what I'm trying to tell you.
Nazis come in and want the Jews on your floor.
Well, there you go.
They say there are Jews on your floor. Do you lie to them?
I get it.
He didn't want to continue.
Are you like-
Sure,
I
sure.
don't go.
Oh, no, that's not it.
Okay.
That's,
Now we're getting.
no,
down
we're
to
supposed to
our-
obey God over government,
Address that.
Well,
because the government is only,
It's
right,
hard
God,
being the
all
state
authority is God
let me
given.
ask, that's good, that's a good
Oh, I'm
point.
gonna
I wanna
bet
ask.
you that.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty good. That's a good point, I wanna ask that.
I've heard. You know,
Uh,
yes, but.
So,
it says
so
this in the Old
godly
Testament,
deception
that's the Old
through
Testament. Most
the
of it ran away,
use
it's
of,
truthful in a different
um,
scripture.
opposite words.
I am.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
You
that,
don't really
that's,
believe that,
that's
do
not a
you?
sin?
I mean, come on.
Transliteration. Because
They're,
today, we have the
all authority is God
technology to
given,
know the
but-
difference
and
between
it's,
A and B, and we can match it up.
they don't have
In the Old Testament, it
our
says that
rule
blood is
according to the way
uncleansed
God
and you
wants them to
cannot
do.
accept.
And they want you to do something that's contrary to what God is
It's
telling us
like
to do.
every time I tried to
Then
say,
if
no,
we were
that's
to
not
obey
exactly
government,
right,
then
she
we
came
would
back
stop.
and would repeat it
You know,
Just having a
So I finally just.
I brought that reason for Jesus and I said, Moses said this, what do you say?
I'm
just pointing out that everyone should have
They
access
told
to
me
free
there's gonna be a lot.
And
And I was trying to get
then also,
personalized
God told him to go
position
kill all the Canaanites.
boy.
See, I'm jumping all over the place here, I'm jumping.
I like it. It's good.
And so,
Or you're gonna enslave the daughters.
and so at some point, God
And
allows
she was
us
trying to.
Otherwise, she was what kept.
murder people we never met,
I knew what she was gonna
And
tell
I'm
me.
like.
Yeah.
or kill
She
them.
just didn't
How
want to
does
listen
it
to
happen?
But what's the difference in that
Either
scenario?
I
We've never met them, we'll go out and
Right.
kill them, their children, their livestock, salt their lands.
You're gonna take all our money.
Respond.
Or are you gonna print more money,
Or
which
even
will
just
devalue
like-
our money?
It's not murder, right? We're contending that this is
Or you can
killing, not
They
murder.
can't venture
And then
outside.
people hate hearing
That's
that
right,
word.
because every time
He said, what is the word?
I was talking-
All right, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to interrupt you guys. I'm gonna have to be a steamroller. Harder to be a steamroller with your friends, isn't it? I've noticed anyway. It seems like everybody's extra polite. You know, it's hard to be a steamroller on purpose, I suppose. But just one closing thought that Greg mentioned in the video that I thought was really valuable and important is Jesus' words not to cast your pearls before swine. So if nothing else that you take away from this, I hope that you remember this part. Don't cast your pearls before swine. So how do you know when to speak and when to keep your pearls to yourself? How do you know?
Well, you know, a lot of people tell, especially their kids, because they're so social minded and they're on these things.
Mm-hmm.
Every time that someone comes back with a negative comment or tries to tell them they're not worth it, don't answer them.
Right.
Just read it and let it go.
Exactly.
Because when you get hooked by that, that's where you're going to end up losing, and the steamroller's just going to continue to make you cry, make you feel bad, and kids get depressed.
Yeah. Because that's exactly what Jesus says, right? Like right after he says, "Don't cast your pearls before swine," the very next thing he says is, "Because then they'll trample on it and turn and rip you to shreds."
And that will defeat you, and you had pearls, and now you think you don't because somebody else stomped on it. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Don't be too hard on yourself if a conversation doesn't go well. You know, if you have to walk away from somebody, it happens. You know, this is the way.
Have the cloth, chime up that diamond, and go.
Yeah, I mean, you can notice if you've been doing it for a while, or have any experience conversing, but if you haven't, you know, another good way is
You're wrong.
if they start insulting you
Yeah.
or calling you names,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're not there to
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. That's a good
Or
point.
like Greg said, like implying that you don't have faith because of your position.
Right. Right.
Yeah, something about benevolence too is old Peterson said, if you're not helping them, then quit trying to help.
Mm.
You know, like you might find yourself in a situation where you go, well, this doesn't seem like it's panning out, you know, and you may think to yourself, well, God obviously tasked me with leaving an impression in this, you know, and then you tell yourself, well, doesn't seem like I'm actually helping the situation. Maybe I just need to reverse for a second.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think that the whole idea of don't cast your pearls before swine is like they don't appreciate what you're giving them. It's not.
It's a good
you know,
point.
the point there, I don't think, is to call this person a swine or to
Right.
degrade them. Is saying that a pig doesn't have the ability to appreciate the beauty of a pearl.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So, if the person isn't responding to the wisdom, then you need to recognize that, they're not in a place or you're not in a position to give them what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. One thing that's mentioned in the book that I'm a little surprised that Greg didn't mention in the video is that when you exhibit confidence, when you have grace under fire, there's this. What he puts in the book is there's this deep, powerful sense of confidence in your own view, which I think goes a long way because after the fact, after everybody's had a chance to calm down, they'll remember that. And that's certainly stuck with me when I watch and listen to debates on YouTube. Seeing when someone gets really worked up and emotional and they interrupt a whole bunch, that kind of evinces a lack of confidence in their own position. Like it sort of exposes a vulnerability in them that maybe they don't really, feel super confident about what they're saying. But, when you do have grace under fire and you have that powerful confidence, that sticks in your mind, that sticks in your memory. And it has sort of an unspoken rhetorical power.
And it also can infuriate the opponent.
That too. Can pour gas on the fire, for sure. All right, well, that's all I have for you this week. Next week is the inside out tactic. We just have 2 left, inside out and mini tactics, and then we'll be done. As most of you probably know, my wife and I are expecting our first child. So after tactics, we'll go on a break. I'm not sure when we'll reconvene, but I hope that we can, continue to do
After a
defenders.
few poopy diapers, you'll be glad to get back.
Yeah. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. It might be a bit of an extended hiatus, but I do hope to continue doing
Well,
this.
it's like what a comedian said one time. He says, at first, they do the poop. Oh, look at that. He says, then God created smell.
All right.
When's your due date?
July 7th.
Oh, mine's 7-11, so maybe it'll be delayed.
Nice. That's a cool date.
I know.
Awesome. Anybody care to pray us out, or I can? All right, I'll pray. Father, we love you, and we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the rich wisdom that you've blessed us with in your word and in the words of your Son. Father, I just pray for the guidance of your Holy Spirit as we go about this week, and I pray that you would open the eyes of our heart to put these tactics into practice, that we may further your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I wanted to